members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Natasha Ganji, and I will be the defense timekeeper for this trial.
Thank you. All right, now that we've met everybody, let's start out. Are there any preliminary matters we need to deal with?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to cover a few preliminary matters.
Okay.
Your Honor, we ask that all stipulated facts be moved into evidence. Additionally, we ask for permission to remain seated during opening statements, direct and cross-examinations, objections, and closing statements. And finally, Your Honor, we ask for permission for our timekeepers to keep their cameras on for the duration of the trial in lieu of using the chat.
All right. I can grant those requests, or 2 and 3 I can grant. What do you have in a response as to stipulated facts being introduced into evidence? I'm assuming there's no objection to that?
No, there's not.
Okay. Then all 3 requests are granted. Anything
Thank you,
else?
Your Honor. That is all from the prosecution. Thank you.
From the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we would like to request that all privileges granted to the prosecution be granted to the defense. We would also like to request that request permission that exhibits be published into evidence by co-counsel members. And then additionally, we would like to request that that is all. Sorry.
Okay, all of those requests will be granted. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Does the prosecution have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to begin?
Please.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We are here today to ensure the triumph of justice, to ensure that good prevails, to ensure that wrongdoers receive retribution for their actions. In this case, the wrongdoer is Avery Becker. Avery obsesses over her mock trial career, rendering her extremely ambitious. And normally, ambition is a great thing, but when unchecked, ambition can be exceptionally destructive, and in this case, fatal. It's not so hard to believe. Take Shakespeare's Macbeth. Macbeth is a valiant general who isn't inherently evil, but just like Avery, Macbeth is also a conniving, deceitful, power-hungry murderer who will stop at nothing to succeed. Comparable how Avery wants to be the best mock trial attorney in the state, Macbeth wants to be king. And as shown in Macbeth, once one resorts to using violence, it becomes increasingly difficult to stop. Macbeth's first kill was King Duncan, and although Macbeth felt guilty, guilt did not save Banquo, Macbeth's family, or Seward from Macbeth's fatal ambition. In this case, Mackenzie Brockman is our King Duncan. Brockman was the first person to get in Avery Becker's way, and there is no telling who will be next. Once a person takes the life of another, a switch is flipped. The change is dark, corruptive, and irrevocable, which is why it is imperative that the charges against Avery Becker go through, to ensure the safety of the community, and to put Avery Becker's treacherous ambition in check for good. To prove that Avery Becker broke into Mackenzie Brockman's house and murdered him, on March 6, 2020, we will present to you 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Alex Fuentes. Alex is a member of the mock trial team and one of Avery Becker's closest friends, so she can attest to the rocky relationship that Avery had with Mr. Brockman. As her friend, Alex wants what's best for Avery, but she also wants justice for her beloved mock trial coach. Alex will irrefutably display Avery's motive for killing Brockman, and furthermore, Alex has evidence of Avery explicitly stating her plan to break into Brockman's house. Next, you will hear from Kyle Kuzik. Mr. Kuzik will display the concrete evidence against Avery Becker. Mr. Kuzik has a stunning 19 years of experience investigating complex crime scenes. Since Mr. Kuzik himself was at the scene of the crime, he can expertly attest to how he believes the murder played out. And as the most qualified person in this room to conduct crime scene reconstruction, Mr. Kuzik's expert opinion is definitive. Finally, you will hear from the expert detective, Jordan Markowitz. Detective Markowitz is a homicide detective for the Denver Police Department and has been working there for 13 whole years, making her extremely experienced and qualified to deliver her expert opinion on this case. While testimonies will always be subjective, no one can refute factual records. Detective Markowitz will display the irrefutable evidence, including videos and cell phone records incriminating Avery Becker. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you to look at the facts of this case as they are presented to you. Our two expert witnesses not only have combined decades of experience, but were both also at the scene of the crime. Their investigations and conclusions are based on facts. On the other hand, Avery Becker based her mock trial success off the gullibility of her audience. She knows how to make a jury eat up her story out of the palm of her hand, but do not be mistaken. The only thing on Avery Becker's hands is blood, the blood of someone who got in her way. Though she may try to sway you with pathetic attempts at a facade of innocence, I urge you to keep in mind the facts. My opposing counsel will play with pathos, pulling at your heartstrings and appealing to your empathy, while my side will base our case off pure facts. We acknowledge that we have the burden of proof, though I wouldn't go so far as to call it a burden when the evidence so clearly speaks for itself. Cell tower records place Avery Becker in the vicinity of Mackenzie Brackman's house, and text messages sent by Avery Becker explicitly state the plan to break into her house. Furthermore, there are ring videos of a perpetrator suspiciously similar to Avery Becker. Avery's ambition got the best of her. If you think back to Macbeth, you'll recall that Macbeth's ambition led to his severed head in his challenger's hands. And in my hands, I seek to have Avery Becker sentenced, as she is guilty for the murder of Mackenzie Brackman. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the defense have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to begin?
Please.
Gentlemen of the jury, today you are going to hear two stories. One will be true and one is merely a fiction. The prosecution will tell you their tale of a girl who cares deeply about mock trial, who may have been a bit late at times, sure, or not as prepared as much as others would have liked her to be, but a girl who cared deeply about mock trial nonetheless. Their fiction, not unlike Shakespeare's Macbeth, tells that my client, Avery Becker, was removed from the team and murdered her former coach. I'm sure everyone remembers high school, right? I'm not the only one. Well, I'm sure most of you were either awkward, anxiety-ridden, or impulsive. I'm going to focus on that last one, impulsive. Nothing you can do will really affect your future, right? You may break the rules or skip class once or twice, and may have been a bit late to mock trial a few times. But after all, you have everything left to lose. Your future, your friends, and in order to get that, all you need to do is pass your last test of senior year, and you're accused of a murder you didn't commit. I'm sure everyone remembers high school, right? Impulsive, but you still knew the difference between right and wrong, and you never have killed someone, right? Now I'm going to tell you another story, one of a different high school student, a student whose father was accused of murder, a student whose father was defended in court by none other than Mr. Mackenzie Brackman himself. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't that great? A teacher defending his student's father in court. And you would be right, except that that student's father was convicted. And now that student, Blair Rollins, has nothing left to lose, and they want revenge. Today, each side will bring 3 witnesses to the stand. The prosecution will bring Kyle Kuzak, an expert witness who will tell you that Blake Van Owens can't be trusted. But that's simply not true. Alex Fuentes, my client's supposed best friend, who will tell you about screenshots of text which can easily be faked. Lastly, they will bring Detective Jordan Markowitz, who will tell you about a signal from Avery's phone that could have come from either my client's house or the residence of Blair Rollins. They're really too close together to tell. The evidence that the prosecution will bring forward either doesn't exist because the files were apparently corrupted, or easily faked. The prosecution's lack of evidence is laughable. They have screenshots of texts, a picture of a broken plate, imprecise phone records, and that's it. Not very much, is it? What their evidence won't do is place my client at the scene of the crime. No DNA, no fingerprints. The only thing that they do have is a video of a masked intruder that could have been anyone. The prosecution's so-called expert witnesses made numerous mistakes in collecting evidence. They were a failure of the system, not trained as well as they should have been, especially in a case of this magnitude. Today, we will call to the stand Avery Becker, the defendant, a bright-eyed student just trying to do her best in senior year of school, having fun with her friends in mock trial. She will tell you the events that actually transpired. Next, Taylor Perkins, my client's best friend, will testify that my client's alibi is true. And lastly, we will bring Blake Van Owen, former police officer turned private investigator, who will tell you what really happened at the crime scene and about all of the faulty police work. I would like to bring your attention to one more thing. Just a small thing about whether my client is found guilty or innocent. The phrase, beyond a reasonable doubt, is held close to our hearts in court. And I'm going to tell you the definition for those who don't know it. It is that no other logical explanation can be derived from the facts except that the defendant committed the crime. Now, I want you to keep that in mind as we go into this case. Innocent until proven guilty. Proven, not an assumption. I want you to ask yourself going into this trial that if you have any reasonable doubt in your mind, would you want to put an innocent teenager in prison? With that in mind, you must find my client innocent, simply because there is a lack of evidence to prove otherwise. There are too many stories and too many loose ends for the prosecution's case to even make a semblance of sense. I want you to think that even at your worst in high school, would you have killed someone? And is there enough evidence to prove my client guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. First witness for the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the prosecution calls Alex Fuentes to the stand. Good morning, Ms. Fuentes. Please state your name, spelling the last for the record.
Alex Fuentes, Sifuentes.
Ms. Fuentes, do you know Avery Becker?
Yes.
And how do you know her?
I met Avery when I was a freshman at Colorado High School, and she was actually the one who told me about mock trial and convinced me to join, and she was my best friend.
How did you know Mackenzie Brockman?
Mr. Bracken was my mock trial coach.
And did you like Mr. Brockman?
Yes, I really liked him.
What did you observe about Miss Becker and Mr. Brockman's interactions?
It seemed that they had a pretty rocky relationship. Brockman was always telling Avery that she needed to practice more, but she would just refuse and play the victim.
At any point leading up to the murder, did you notice a change? Did you observe a change in Mr. Brockman and Miss Becker's interactions?
Yeah, it got worse.
And when did this happen?
During a practice, when Avery showed up late again.
What happened after this practice?
Well, Mr. Brockman demoted Avery to B team, but then Avery's second best friend, Taylor Perkins, quit the team, and Avery was able to move back up to A team.
And how did Miss Becker do at the regional tournament?
She did really well. She won the Best Attorney Award and the Best Closing Argument Award.
What did Mr. Brockman do after Miss Becker won her awards?
He basically just told her that her actions would not be acceptable in the real world.
And what happened after this practice?
As Avery was leaving practice, she vandalized Mr. Brockman's car.
And what did she do to Mr. Brockman's car?
She wrote Worst Attorney Award across the hood in a Sharpie. That stuff doesn't come off easily.
In your opinion, does a dry erase marker look anything like the Sharpie that she grabbed?
No, the Sharpie looked nothing like a dry erase marker. She grabbed the Sharpie from the easel of paper that we used to write ideas down, not the whiteboard.
Were there any repercussions for Miss Becker after she did this?
Yes, Mr. Brockman kicked Avery off the team for good.
And did you have any communication with Miss Becker after this?
Yes, she texted me.
What did she text you?
She texted me asking that I speak to Brockman about letting her back on the team.
And what did you do in response to this?
I mean, I said that I would help her because she was my best friend, but I also didn't want the team to have to suffer for someone else's actions, so I spoke to Brockman.
How did Mr. Brockman respond to your pleading?
He said no.
And what did you observe about Miss Becker's reaction to the refusal?
She was fuming.
Did Miss Becker say anything further to you on the subject?
Yes, she texted me.
Were you approached by the police to the murder?
I was called by a detective.
And what did you tell the detective?
I didn't want to betray Avery, but I also didn't want to lie. I don't want to go to jail, so I told the detective about the text messages from Avery.
Thank you, Ms. Fuentes. I'd like to now further discuss the text messages you previously mentioned. I will now show you what has been previously marked as Z. Your Honor, may I have permission for a co-counsel to screen share Exhibit 14?
You may.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a printed screenshot of my text conversation with Avery detailing her plan to vandalize the house.
And to the best of your knowledge, who sent you these text messages?
Avery Becker.
Does it show exactly what the conversation said?
Yes.
And why did you decide to give these to the detective on the case?
It shows that Avery was planning to break into Brockman's house the day that he was murdered. That's not a coincidence.
What did you do after this?
I went down to the police station for an interview.
Did you bring your phone with the text messages with you to the police station?
No, I did not.
Why not?
My phone is really old and it barely held any battery, so I plugged it in before we left, and I just forgot it on our way out.
And were you asked to bring the phone in person after this?
No, the detective told me that I could just send in screenshots.
Do you still have the phone with the text messages with you?
No, like I said, it barely worked anymore, and I traded it in for a new one a few months ago, so I have no idea where it is now.
Your Honor, I offer Exhibit 15 be entered as evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
14 will be admitted.
What did the text from Miss Becker say during this conversation?
It's basically Avery telling me about her plan to break into Brockman's house and trash it while he's at work.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to stop screen sharing?
Yes.
Did you see Miss Becker after she got kicked off the team?
Yes, I saw her at the Fry Shack on March 5th.
And did you talk to her at this time?
Yes, I did.
Please explain your conversation with her.
Basically, I was telling Avery that she just needed to move on from the mock trial team, and she thanked me for asking Brockman to let her back on the team, and she even told me that I should win the Best Attorney Award that year because she was my best friend.
How do you know Blair Rollins?
I went to school with him.
And how well did you know each other?
We barely knew each other. I don't even know if I had a class with him.
Would you say that you and Miss Becker were rivals?
No, of course not. We were best friends, and if anything, it was more of a healthy competition.
Which role did Miss Becker play on the mock trial team?
Avery always wanted to be a lawyer because that's where she could get the most glory, but she also played several witness roles.
As a fellow member of the mock trial team, what was your opinion of Miss Becker as a witness?
Avery was really good at making things up on the spot, and no one could tell that she wasn't telling the truth, and that's what made her such a good witness. She was very good at lying.
Would you ever want to hurt Mr. Brackman in any way?
No, of course
Your Honor,
not.
leading question.
I'm sorry.
Objection, Your Honor, leading question.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Please.
Sorry, are you asking for the would you ever want to hurt Mr. Brackman in any way? Okay.
Yeah.
This question does not imply the answer in the question itself.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Your Honor, there are no questions.
Counsel, I don't know if your witness answered that question.
Oh, would you ever hurt him in any way?
No, of course not. I really liked him.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Your Honor, there are no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. You went to CS, correct?
Yes, I did.
With Avery Becker.
Yes.
Would you say that you and Avery were best friends,
Yes, we were.
even though you only hung out during mock trial events?
Although our friendship did stem from mock trial, we were still best friends.
And true that you believe Avery and you were equally skilled team members.
Yes, we were both very, very good.
And you also believe that the team was better off without Avery, even though you and Avery were equally skilled team members.
I think that it was just difficult sometimes for the team to have to see Avery not preparing, and then that was putting the team at risk. So sometimes.
And you also believe that Avery coasted on good looks alone, although you earlier said you were of equal skill.
I do believe that sometimes her victories did come from her coasting on her good looks.
And would you say you worked very hard in mock trial?
I did. I worked extremely hard and prepared a very long time in advance to be ready for mock trial.
And did you ever resent Avery for not preparing?
I definitely did not resent her. I, of course, wished that she would prepare and would be more there for the team, but I didn't hate her.
And didn't Avery ask you to see if you could get her back on the team, and you complied?
She did. She texted me and asked me to talk to Brockman.
And you said that you and Avery were not rivals, correct?
No, we were not. It was a healthy competition.
And you thought the team was better off without her?
Again, it was just difficult to see her not trying as hard for the team.
Additionally, you failed to bring your phone to the meeting with Detective Mark Woods, correct?
It had a very old battery, and I left it charging, and I forgot to take it with me to the interview.
And so you only sent him screenshots, correct?
I was told I only needed to send screenshots.
In these screenshots, is it true that Avery sent you a text message saying, "Hey, Alex, it's Avery"?
Yes.
But you already said that you and Avery were best friends, correct?
Yes, we were best friends.
And you already had Avery's contact information.
I did.
That is all, That is all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Because we're running on a time crunch, let's go ahead and move on. Does the prosecution have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuzak, please state your name, spelling the last for the record.
My name is Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
And what is your job?
I work as a crime scene reconstruction investigator, or a CSR.
Mr. Kuzak, can you please explain what it is that a CSR does?
Of course, CSR work involves identification of event segments and their sequencing based on scientific principles and the scientific method.
And how long have you had that job for?
I believe I've spent the past 19 years of my life investigating complex crime scenes, which include homicides, home invasion, theft, domestic violence, and more.
And how long have you worked at the city of Denver?
I've been working for the past 3 years with the Denver Police Department as a civilian employee, not to be confused with a police officer.
So then you've spent most of your life working on these crimes?
Yes.
And throughout this time, have you used mostly the same methods?
I have.
And what are those methods?
I first used Bevel and Gardner's 7-step methodology, and then I used the 5 CSR steps in reconstruction.
Mr. Kuzak, can you please tell us why you were here today?
Today, I'm here to offer up my findings and evidence relating to the homicide of Mackenzie Brackman.
Your Honor, at this time, I ask that this witness be entered as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Does the defense have any voir dire or an objection to this witness being accepted as an expert?
Yes, Your Honor, brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kuzak, do you list any formal education in your testimony?
I do not believe so.
Do you list any training that you have or need to be a crime scene reconstruction investigator in your testimony?
I list that I've spent 19 years of my life in my field of expertise.
And you are a civilian employee and not an actual police officer, correct?
That is correct.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, the defense counsel objects to Kyle Kuzak being admitted as an expert witness in crime scene investigation due to his lack of education.
Prosecution, what's your response?
Your Honor, as my witness has worked most of his life as a CSR, and as a police officer, it would have taken away from his work to be able to be a CSR, along with he was at the scene of the crime, so he has well more information about this case than Mr. Van Owen would, and he is more experienced in Mr. Van Owen than in this case.
I will find that he meets the guidelines for Rule 702, and the court will accept him as an expert in crime scene reconstruction. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I would like to direct your attention to Exhibit 17, permission for co-counsel to share this exhibit.
Yes, please.
Mr. Kuzak, do you recognize this?
Yes,
And have you reviewed this exhibit?
I have.
How did you obtain this chart?
I made this flowchart specifically for this case.
And what is it?
The Exhibit 17 flowchart shows my thought process based on evidence brought by witnesses, and it also shows the reconstruction process I used, which can help me and the jury understand key physical and chronological relationships.
Has this been altered in any way?
No.
And did the information in this chart assist you in forming your opinions on this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe I've laid sufficient foundation and move that Exhibit 17 be entered as evidence.
Any objection by the defense?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, 17 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, can you explain the next steps you used?
My next steps involved preparing materials for formal analysis, which involved expanding on existing framework for information. And this is very helpful as images are the focus of analysis, and separate spreadsheet can help everyone discern exactly what is going on.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to stop sharing their screen.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzak, did you look at the ring camera footage of the Brockman household?
Yes, I did.
And from the footage, what could you gather about the appearance of the perpetrator?
I believe the perpetrator matched the general height and build of the defendant. Sadly, we couldn't really tell anything else from the cameras.
Was he carrying a knife as he walked in?
He was not.
And can you explain how the perpetrator entered the house?
Of course. The perpetrator first checked the front door, and then I believe he went around the south side of the residence, out of the camera's range, and was then shown moments later on camera entering the victim's residence through the back sliding glass door.
And was that what caused the scuff marks?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, scuff mark in front of the sliding glass door entered.
I would now like to direct your attention to your findings along the path of the struggle to the kitchen specifically. Based on your observations, was there a knife drawer in the kitchen?
A drawer was found open with small knives and other kitchen utensils found inside of it.
And was there a knife block in the kitchen as well?
Yes, a knife block was also on the counter with the chef's knife missing.
What is the significance of a chef's knife missing from that block?
I believe the missing knife was ultimately the knife recovered from Mr. Bracken's body.
Your Honor, I would like to direct your attention to Exhibits 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let the record reflect that I'm now referring to what has previously been marked as Exhibits 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Permission for co-counsel to share these exhibits?
All at one time?
Yes, Your Honor. Just one at a time, but to flip through them.
Okay. Yeah, one at a time makes more sense.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kuzak, do you recognize these photos?
I do.
And have you reviewed these exhibits?
I have.
How did you obtain these images?
They came from routine at the scene of the crime.
And what are they?
These are blood photos from the Bracken house.
Have they been altered in any way?
Yes, if you were corrupted a little, but only after I got the information I needed.
Did the information in these pictures assist you in forming your opinions on this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe I have laid sufficient foundation and move that Exhibits 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 be entered as evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
How did these blood splatter patterns impact your investigation, Mr. Kuzak?
These patterns show the large amount of blood near the front door where the victim eventually died. It also shows where the victim fell after removing the knife.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to stop screen sharing?
Yes, but just in the future, before you start referring to them, make sure the court admits those before you start talking about them.
Yes, Your Honor.
So your exhibits will be admitted, but allow me to introduce those into evidence. If not, you don't have a record. Okay. So
Yes, Your Honor.
that's fine. That's fine. She can take them off the screen.
Mr. Kuzak, what was the initial conclusion you came to?
I believe the victim first became aware of the injury through the ring cameras, where he grabbed a knife to defend himself. The two then fought over the knife, and eventually the victim was disarmed, leaving the perpetrator with the weapon, and finally he was stabbed in the back.
And can you explain how the perpetrator stabbed the victim in the back?
Of course, from our knowledge, during the struggle, I believe the perpetrator reached over and stabbed the victim in the upper back shoulder area.
And how did the victim ultimately die?
The victim got stabbed. The knife lodged in the victim's aorta in the upper back. It initially acted as a plug of bleeding, but when it was removed, the victim experienced severe internal bleeding. In other words, he was likely dead before he hit the ground.
Do you know Miss Van Owen?
I do.
Have you reviewed her crime scene reconstruction?
I have.
And who did she claim the knife belonged to?
She claimed it belonged to the perpetrator.
Do you believe the knife belonged to the perpetrator?
It's possible the knife came from the outside, sure. However, the knife exactly fits the missing spot in the wood block, and it's not usual for people to place knives if they're lost or damaged.
What were the perpetrator's intentions?
I believe this was an intended burglary gone horribly wrong.
Have you met Miss Van Owen before?
I have at CSR conferences.
And why do you disagree with her?
I'm far more qualified than Ms. Van Owen in this area.
Why is that?
She has never been CSR.
And were you at the scene of the crime?
I was there, yes.
Was Miss Van Owen there?
She was not.
And should a CSR case conclusion have any weight if the person writing it was not at the scene of the crime?
In the CSR aspect of this case, really anyone's conclusions do not have a lot of weight if they weren't at the scene of the crime.
And would they have made a logical conclusion?
Conclusions will always be made, but they are meaningless with the degree of understanding that comes from working at the scene of the crime.
What do you believe is wrong with Miss Van Owen's idea?
The only way this conclusion could be reached, in my opinion, is by first deciding the intended outcome and then by only looking for evidence that would have supported this predetermined conclusion.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Kuzak, you reconstructed the events for this case, correct?
I believe I have.
But you were unable to recreate all of the event segments?
It's impossible to recreate every single case with 100% accuracy every single time, but based on my expertise, I believe I reached a logical conclusion.
And you noticed scuff marks on the kitchen floor, correct?
I did.
But you did not date these scuff marks?
It's impossible for scuff marks to be carbon dated, but I believe they're of the product of a struggle.
So you cannot be sure that these scuff marks were created from a brawl, correct?
I believe it to be possible that the scuff marks were created from the brawl because we also have other evidence that suggests there was a brawl, such as the broken plate.
But you cannot be sure that these scuff marks were created from the brawl.
I believe it to be very possible that they are created, but again, we can never be 100% sure in all of our findings.
And the knife that the victim was stabbed with did not match Brockman's other knives, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuzak, wasn't Mackenzie Brockman only stabbed once?
He was only stabbed once.
And he was stabbed in the pulmonary artery, wasn't he?
Yes, in the aorta.
So the knife would have been very hard to pull out, correct?
I'm not sure I'm exactly qualified to answer that in that area, as I'm not exactly sure how hard it would be for Mr. Brackman to pull the knife out.
Okay,
yeah.
Moving on. You only saw the crime scene after the investigators, right?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You only saw the crime scene after the investigators?
I believe I was there to document my findings at the scene of the crime.
And there were no fingerprints on anything in the house revolving around Avery Becker, was there?
Correct, but I'm glad you asked that because it's to be expected based on that the perpetrator was wearing gloves.
And in the ring videos, the perpetrator was completely covered, correct?
Yeah, we couldn't really discern a lot about the perpetrator's appearance from the videos.
So the perpetrator could be anybody, isn't that right?
It's possible he could be anybody, but again, that's why we're here, to prove who committed the crime.
So according to your evidence, you cannot draw a concrete conclusion that Avery Becker is guilty, can you?
I believe that according to my expertise and my 19 years of experience, I have drawn a very logical and reasonable conclusion.
But you cannot be positive that Avery Becker is guilty.
It's possible.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may be excused. Does the prosecution for the witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Thank you.
Good morning, Detective Markowitz. Please state your name, spelling the last for the record.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department.
And how long have you worked for the Denver Police Department?
I've been working with the DPD for about 13 years.
And how long have you been a homicide detective for?
Several years. 7 years. In fact, several of the cases that I investigated were defended by Bracken.
And are you a homicide detective for this case?
Yes.
And do you have any special training relevant to this case?
I have a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
And what did you learn from this training?
I learned about the types of cell phone data and records that can be obtained, how to use forensic software such as the Celebrite system to download information from a cell phone, how to obtain and interpret cellular records, and how to obtain and interpret cell tower data.
And how often do you use your training?
Constantly. I've downloaded the contents of literally hundreds of cell phones. I also use cell tower data on a regular basis. I've used cell tower data in over 50 cases.
Thank you, Detective Markowitz. Your Honor, I move to have this witness, Detective Jordan Markowitz, admitted as an expert homicide detective as well as an expert in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Just the technical aspect. Is this going to get into reconstruction like the previous witness?
This will not get into reconstruction, no.
Any voir dire or objection from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. I do have a brief voir dire. Ms. Markowitz, you are not an expert in blood spatter, correct?
Correct, but I've been on enough crime scenes to know what may have happened.
What may have happened. How long was the call data record course?
My certification, my education lasted 3 days. It was a full 3 days of education. I learned so much.
You had a 3-day course, only 3 days, and yet you convict murderers with the knowledge imparted upon you in those 3 days?
Well, I also served in the DPD for about 13 years. And as I said, I've been a detective for 7 years. So I also use my experience as well as my education.
That will be enough. Just a yes or no, please. Your Honor, I would like to demote Detective Markowitz's expertise in call data records as his training was very minimal. I would also like to remind the jury that Detective Markowitz is not a blood spatter expert as she never completed any training about it.
May I respond, Your Honor?
There's no need to. Counsel, those arguments are great for closing. That has nothing to do with the qualifications of this detective as an expert. I will go ahead and accept the detective as an expert in cell phone technology.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, I'd like to now discuss the screenshots you received from Alex Fuentes. Please direct your attention to Exhibit 14. Let the record reflect I am referring to a copy of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 14. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share?
Yes.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, what are the contents of these screenshots?
Well, in the screenshots, Avery talks about her plan to trash Brackman's house while he's at work. She also confesses in the screenshots about how she cares more about her own mock trial career than Brackman's well-being.
And did you contact Miss Becker subsequently receiving these screenshots?
I initially contacted Avery Becker for an interview, but was then informed by her lawyer that all communication would go through her.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to stop screen sharing?
Yes.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, did you search Avery Becker's cell phone?
Well, I obtained a warrant to search Avery Becker's phone, but was then informed by her lawyer that Avery Becker had lost her phone on March 5th, 2020. It seems convenient.
And do you have any information from Miss Becker's cell phone?
Objection, Your Honor. That is a leading question.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, please.
The question I asked does not directly apply an answer in any direction and therefore is not leading.
Defense, your response to that?
I believe that it was. Can you please repeat the question, though?
Of course. I asked, do you have any information from Miss Becker's cell phone?
That could be answered with a yes or no. Do you have?
Correct, an answer to do you have would be yes or no, and therefore it is not leading as it does not imply a yes or no, but rather leaves the option for a yes or no response.
Counsel, just the way I look at leading questions is that the question suggests the answer. There's no way that that question suggests an answer, so I'm going to overrule your objection.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Detective Markowitz, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Do you have any information from Ms. Becker's cell phone?
Well, her lawyer did give me her cell phone number, so I got a court order to obtain account records from Becker's service provider, and I also got cell tower records from March 6, 2020.
And what did you do with the account records?
They confirmed that the cell phone number I was given is associated with the cell phone account in Avery Becker's name.
You mentioned that you also received cell tower records. I'd like to further discuss these now. Will you explain what those are?
Of course. Technically, what I received are call detail records, or CDRs. Amongst other things, CDRs tell you the date and time of communication, and most importantly, the tower with which the cell phone was communicating.
Thank you. Please direct your attention to Exhibit 15 and Exhibit 16. Let the record reflect, I'm referring to copies of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 15 and Exhibit 16. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share?
Yes.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, do you recognize these?
Yes.
And how did you obtain these records?
I received these CDRs during my investigation, and I marked Exhibit 16 myself.
And what is each one?
Exhibit 15 is a diagram I made that summarized the CDR from Becker's phone on March 6, 2020, and Exhibit 16 is the same diagram as seen before in Exhibit 15, but with the route I highlighted that I think Becker used to get to Brackman's house.
And have these records been altered in any way?
No.
Did the information in these CDRs assist you in forming your opinions on the case?
They are critical to the case.
Thank you, Detective. Your Honor, I believe I've laid sufficient foundation and move that Exhibit 15 and Exhibit 16 be entered as evidence.
Defense counsel, before I ask your position, Detective, does this show every cell tower within those red marked areas, or are there specific cell towers that you're looking?
So, in the diagram, you can see that there are 3 cell towers in the diagram. The array is the length that the cell tower reaches. It has a 120 degree arc. So that is what the information is showing on the diagram.
And I can't tell, is that a reflection that makes the quality somewhat poor? Is that what that is, or is that the way the map came out? Like to the left of the map, is that just like a reflection, or why is that quality so poor?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. The Zoom just kind of distorts the quality a bit, and the central document is slightly distorted due to technological issues.
That's what I thought. Okay, I'm sorry. Defense counsel, do you have an objection or do you have any voir dire about these exhibits?
No, I do not, Your Honor.
No questions, then 15 and 16 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, what did these CDRs tell you?
Well, notice that the timestamps under each of the towers. This is from when Taylor Perkins called or texted Avery Becker's phone. Clearly looking at Exhibit 16, you can see that the pings follow the route I highlighted.
And according to the CDRs, what happened between 12:45 and 12:55 p.m.?
Well, what the CDR indicates is that from 12:45 to 12:50, Avery Becker was at her home, then left driving most likely along Rock Creek Parkway at about 12:55.
And what happened between 1:05 and 1:17 p.m.?
From 1:05 to 1:17, Becker was at Brackman's house.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to stop screen sharing?
Yes, permission.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, who was contacting Becker's phone at this time?
Becker's crony, Taylor Perkins.
And where was the cell phone for the majority of the time?
The closest tower to Brackman's house, Tower 1197-1.
And how long was the phone there for?
About 12 minutes.
Based on your expert knowledge as a homicide detective, is 12 minutes enough time to stab someone?
Most certainly.
And from the CDRs, how do you think Becker got to Brackman's house?
While I don't know for sure, but Rock Creek Parkway would be the most logical route to get from Becker's house to Brackman's house.
Thank you, Detective. I'd like to now talk about your investigations at the Bracken residence. Were you at the scene of the crime?
Yes, I was.
And based on the number of homicides you've investigated, what do you think happened to the victim?
The victim had caught someone breaking in and confronted the intruder with a large knife from the kitchen, but the intruder got control of the knife and stabbed the victim.
Counsel, I thought this witness was not going to go into reconstruction.
I'm sorry, you cut out. What did you say?
I thought this witness was not going to go into crime scene reconstruction. What she's testifying to is crime scene reconstruction. I thought that witness was not going into that.
Your Honor, I was not explicitly asking the witness to testify a matter of reconstructing the scene, but rather what she believes happened to the victim based off her experience as a homicide detective and her experience at the scene of the crime.
And her reconstruction of the crime scene led to her opinion as to what happened. So, defense, do you have any objection to this line of questioning?
Yes, I would like to object. That is outside of your area of expertise. You do not have any training on crime scene reconstruction and therefore cannot testify to this.
No. Prosecution, I'll allow you to lay a foundation that she has that expertise, but based on what you laid before, she's not an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Markowitz, I'll move on. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share a copy of Exhibit 12?
Yes.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is it?
It is a video from Brackman's Ring camera of an intruder intentionally breaking in through the back door.
And did you obtain this recording yourself?
Yes.
How so?
In the crime, I obtained Brackman's data and passwords from his Ring account, and I downloaded the videos on March 6, 2020.
And has this video been altered in any way?
No.
Did you review this video as part of your case?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I believe I've laid sufficient foundation and move that Exhibit 12 be entered as evidence.
Defense?
Yes, yeah, I'm fine if you move that into evidence, Your Honor.
No objection? Okay, counsel, is that number 12, did you say?
Yes, Your Honor, number 12.
12 will be admitted.
Thank you. Permission for co-counsel to stop screen sharing?
Yes.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, in the Ring video you just viewed, is the intruder identifiable?
While the intruder is wearing a mask and gloves, they are about the same build as Avery Becker.
And in your opinion, what does the wearing of a mask and gloves signify?
Well, clearly the intruder didn't want to leave any identifiable marks, so they were up to no good.
And based on your experience as a homicide detective, do you think the intruder was an ex-client of Brackman?
Although it is something to consider, it is highly unlikely.
Based on the cell phone evidence you've collected and your experience as an expert homicide detective, what conclusions do you make?
It is absolutely clear that Avery Becker went to Mackenzie Brackman's house on Friday, March 6, 2020 to break in and vandalize the house. But Becker got the knife and ended up fatally stabbing Brackman.
Thank you, Detective Markowitz. Your Honor, there are no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So is it true that you are convinced that Avery Becker has murdered her former mock trial coach, Mr. Brackman?
That is what I believe from the evidence that I collected. That is the conclusion I've come to.
And a large part of that is because of some screenshots of text, correct?
Well, one piece of that evidence that I collected was the screenshots. It wasn't based directly on the screenshots, but that is one part of it.
And screenshots can be edited along with the general text sent, correct?
Objection, compound.
Rephrase, counsel.
Screenshots can be edited, correct?
Well, you would have to be very good at Photoshop in order to edit the screenshots. It takes a little.
Please, just a yes or no question.
Oh, okay. Can you repeat the question then?
Yes. Screenshots can be edited, correct?
If you were good enough at screenshot, yes.
Okay. And then you can also send text messages to yourself and fake the messages, correct?
Objection assumes facts, not evidence.
Counsel, response?
No response. Thank you.
Would you like to strike that question?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yes. Oh, sorry.
All right, I'll strike that question. So go ahead and rephrase, ask another question.
Okay, so in theory, those screenshots could in fact be fake.
Objection, speculation.
Counsel, she is an expert. It's within her realm of expertise, so she's allowed.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Opposing counsel asked in theory and therefore setting up a hypothetical situation when in reality may not pertain to the truth of the matter asserted in this case.
Well, let's see what her answer is.
Thank you.
Go ahead and answer the question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So those screenshots could have, in theory, been faked.
Well, it is possible that they were, but the amount of time that she had from our interview to the time that she sent them was about a day. So she would have had to been very, very good at Photoshop.
And you have specific training to avoid such a thing from happening, correct? In fact, haven't you download data from hundreds of phones?
You're correct. I have downloaded contents from hundreds of phones.
And yet, in this pivotal piece of evidence for a homicide, you didn't use your training?
Well, Alex Fuentes did not bring her phone to the interview. People sometimes get very nervous when coming to police interviews. Police make people nervous. Even though I'm not scary looking, other people make them nervous.
However, Cellbrite does allow this, correct? Does allow you to examine the contents?
The Cellbrite system?
Yes, the Cellbrite system.
It allows me to download information from a cell phone. But she did not have her cell phone, so I could not download the information.
And the Ring doorbell videos, can you see the face of the intruder in them?
Well, like I said earlier, the intruder has a mask and gloves on, so I cannot tell the identity of the intruder.
can you see any unique identifying features of the intruder?
Well, the intruder has about the same build as Avery Becker, so if that's what you mean, yes.
So can you identify anything other than a extremely general body type?
No, I cannot.
And call data records tell you whenever a call or text came in or went out, right?
Yes, they tell you the incoming and outgoing calls, and that tells you whether it's a call or a text.
So if you had examined the CDRs from March 5th, it would have shown any calls or text that came to or from Avery Becker's phone?
Well, like I said, Taylor Perkins did call and text Avery
On
Becker's.
March 5th.
Oh, on March 5th. Sorry, I misheard you. Well, I did not get CDR records from March 5th, so.
Yet you could have seen whether or not Alex Fuentes and Avery had a conversation on March 5th.
That was if I had gotten the CDRs from March 5th, but I did not, so.
And so that means that you cannot confirm whether or not the text between Avery and Alex actually happened.
Well, I have Alex Fuentes' witness statement, and I also have the screenshots of the text, so.
Now, there's still the matter of the cell towers. Tell me, do cell towers have a range of 5 miles from the cell tower and a radius of 120 degrees?
Yes, you are correct. They do have a range of 5 miles and an 120-degree arc.
So Avery's phone, with which also both she and Taylor claim was stolen, could have been quite a long way away from Mr. Brackman's home, correct?
Well, within that radius.
And you say that cell towers have a very complex algorithm for connecting to the cell tower, right?
Yes, they do.
So being so complicated, can't that data be a little inaccurate?
Well, there are always errors in everything. So you can never be 100% about anything, but that is very unlikely for that to have happened.
You can never be 100%. So Avery's phone could have been even farther than 5 miles.
Well, there would have had to been a lot of traffic on the tower 1197-1 for that to have happened. But like I said, it is unlikely for that to have happened.
And the calls incoming to Avery's phone, they were all very short in duration, and most likely no one picked them up.
Well, we can see that nobody picked them up on the CDR. And yes, we can tell they are short in duration.
And when you lose your phone, do you try to call it to see if you can hear it ring?
Objection relevancy.
Response.
Your Honor, this will have relevance. It is to prove that that the cell tower data could in fact be from a missing phone call, and establishing that misplacing a phone is common.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Please.
Under Rule 401, an issue central to us, I apologize, an issue central to this case is relevant, but a phone ringing is not central to this case and therefore is not relevant.
Counsel, I don't think that's the question he's asking. My understanding of the question is he's wanting to know if another phone possibly pinged off that cell tower. Is that my understanding of your question, Counsel?
My question is whether or not the phone calls could have been because they were trying to find Miss Becker's phone, Your Honor.
Ask that question. I will overrule the objection.
Thank you.
Okay.
So ask that exact question, Counsel.
Okay. when you lose your phone, do you try to call it to see if you can hear it ring?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and so isn't that what the call records show for the calls to Avery's phone?
Well, along
Objection speculation.
And she's an expert. Um, a layperson's speculation is an expert's educated opinion. So go ahead.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Isn't that what you saw for the call records that show the calls to Avery's phone?
Well, along with along with the calls, there were texts. So unless Avery Becker had like vibration or pings on her phone to notify her of text, the phone wouldn't have made any noise when she was texting her. So I find it unlikely.
Did you ever track Taylor's phone when you discovered Avery's phone was potentially missing?
Well, I only got CDR records from Avery Becker's phone and her service provider information. So no.
You have no proof whether or not Taylor was at the mall?
No, I do not.
Objection beyond the scope of the direct.
Counsel?
However, it is in Miss Markowitz's witness statement, so she can testify to this.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Please. Mm-hmm.
The evidence being solicited has not been covered by my previous questioning in the direct and therefore is not relevant to any of the previous issues that have been covered.
Well, you're right. In the real world, we would say that that is beyond the scope of direct. However, under these very limited circumstances where he can't recall the witness, I'll let him go ahead and ask the question. But you are right. You are right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. And so you have no proof whether or not Taylor was at the mall?
Like I said, I did not get CDR information or CDR records from Taylor Perkins' phone, only from Avery's, so no.
So you never bothered to use your training in cell towers to check the main alibi of the main suspect?
Objection argumentative.
Rephrase, counsel.
So, okay, yes, thank you, Your Honor. So you didn't use the training in cell towers to check the alibi of the main suspect?
I only got CDR information and account records from Avery Becker and for her phone. So I did not get any information from Taylor Perkins or for Taylor Perkins.
Furthermore, did you notice that Blair Rowland's residence is in fact right down the street from Miss Becker's?
I did not look at that information.
And yet it is right down the street. It shows it in your own exhibit.
In exhibit 15 or 16?
I believe that is exhibit 15. And I think it's also in exhibit 16.
Counsel?
What?
Can you show that to me? Can you point exactly where that says that on exhibit 15 or 16?
Yes, one sec. Let me just pull it up. My tab's shut down. As you can see, right here we have Miss Becker's house, and right here we have Mr. Rowland's house. They are right down the street from each other, correct?
Oh, so you said Roland's house is down the street from Becker's. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But just to reaffirm, Blair Rowland's residence is directly down the street, correct?
As you just showed me, it is.
Okay. And yet, even though he could have just as easily followed that same route, you never considered him a suspect?
Like I said, Brackman had a lot of disgruntled ex-clients, but Blair Rollins was not an ex-client. He was a son of an ex-client. And although his father did venge vengeance, if that makes sense, he does not have anything to do with the death of Brackman.
But according to your witness statement, did you investigate anyone else after you locked onto my client?
Avery Becker?
Yes, after you decide to investigate Avery Becker, did you investigate anyone else?
Well, I did go through I tried to look through every possibility, starting with the ex-clients, but then I was led to the mock trial team. And
Please,
Avery,
can I just have a yes or no answer?
well, the evidence led me to Avery Becker.
But you did not investigate anyone else.
I went where the evidence followed. I followed the evidence.
And to wrap at the point we are today with Avery Becker as our suspect, you asked Alex Fuentes. Did you ask anyone else?
Well, I interviewed Alex Fuentes, but then I tried to interview Avery Becker, but was unable to because her lawyer did not allow me. But I cannot force anybody to have an interview, so.
And so you had one person. Now, tell me, is there any physical evidence that my client was at the scene of the crime?
Objection, improper expert opinion.
Detective, answer the question if you can.
We have the ring video evidence, as well as, the ring video evidence from the scene of the crime. Oh, and we have the screenshots that tell us that Avery Becker had planned to come to Brackman's house on the day, to trash his house originally, but then ended up murdering him.
Now, did the Ring doorbell footage that you mentioned have any actual identification of my client?
Objection, asked and answered.
I believe it has been asked and answered, Counsel.
Okay, well, I think we have a pretty clear picture here. No further questions, Your Honor.
Objection, move to strike commentary. I think we have a pretty clear picture here.
That comment will be stricken. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
With that, does the prosecution have any further evidence?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution has no further witnesses.
All right. Is everybody okay? Anybody need a break, or are we ready to move on into the defense case? Not hearing anything, does the defense have a witness?
Wait, I'm sorry, Your Honor. Something was happening. But yes, I would like to call Avery Becker up to the stand. Can you please state your full name and spell out your last for the jury?
Sure. My name is Avery Becker, Becker being Becker.
Good morning, Miss Becker. How are you?
Well, I'm definitely really anxious. It's not really every day you get accused of killing a coach, specifically a mock trial coach.
Yeah, I imagine that'd be very difficult. Now, could you tell me what you were doing on the day of March 6th?
Yeah. Taylor and I, that's Taylor Perkins, we skipped school for the day.
And why exactly would you have done that?
It's kind of embarrassing. I sort of lost my phone. So Taylor decided to help me look for it instead of going to school because we didn't have any assessments that day and the workload for the day was going to be really minimal.
And what were the results of your search?
We checked all over the mall and the Fry Shack, but we never found it.
And how long were you searching?
We probably searched I don't know, all day. I couldn't find it. I couldn't have had it at a crime scene if I didn't even.
Objection narrative.
Counsel?
I don't believe this is a narrative. It's only a few sentences.
Your Honor, may I respond?
No. Counsel, have your witness respond to questions. If you need to ask more than one question, ask more than one question. But he is correct. Your witness is having a tendency to kind of go off on a tangent. So respond to questions, please.
Okay,
Thank you, Your Honor.
thank you, Your Honor. How long were you searching?
We searched, I don't know, all day.
And what were you doing to the day prior as the date of the murder, March 5th?
Taylor and I had school, and then we went to the Fry Shack near the mall.
And who all did you see there?
There were a lot of people from CHS. It was a really frequent hangout spot.
Was there anyone specific?
Alex Fuentes was there, and he was just really bothering me. I let him play
Yeah.
games on my phone.
What else happened here?
Well, I stormed off at one point. Alex always finds a way to get on my nerves. He says we're best friends, but we definitely aren't.
And after you stormed off, what did you do with your phone?
Taylor and I believe that I left my phone at the table. I'm not really sure. I was really distracted at that point.
And what happened with your phone when you left the Fry Shack?
I was still a little frazzled from the situation, so I left my phone there. I went back to check the next day, and it was gone. In my opinion, I think it was stolen.
Wow, that's quite the statement. Do you have any evidence to back this up?
Well, it's like that one thing police say. We have the means, the motive, and the opportunity.
And what are the means, motive, and opportunity?
It's three parts. To start off, we have the means, where a criminal has a way to commit the crime.
And the second part, the motive?
The motive, which is a reason to commit the crime.
And then what is the third, the opportunity?
The opportunity is the actual shot at committing the crime.
Objection. Move to strike the last two questions as improper lay opinion.
Counsel?
I don't believe it is improper lay of opinion. Isn't it? Isn't it simply defining the means, motive, and opportunity?
We're awfully close to having an expert right now. So I think you need to tread lightly. I'll let her go ahead and answer the question, but I wouldn't solicit any more opinions at this point.
Okay, yes, thank you, Your Honor. So who do you believe stole it?
It was totally Alex. I saw him the day before, and they were always jealous.
Objection narrative.
I think the question actually required a bit of a narrative answer, so I'm going to overrule that objection.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Counsel.
Okay, so who do you believe stole it?
It was totally Alex. I saw him the day before, and they were always jealous of my spot on the team. So at some point when I saw him, they must have stolen it, and that's why Taylor and I couldn't find it.
So how does this tie into the case exactly?
It seems really logical that Alex Fuentes had my phone, and that phone was also near the scene of the crime, as proven by Detective Markowitz.
Objection. Improper lay opinion. Move to strike.
Counsel?
Sorry, what'd you say?
You objected to your question, saying it was an improper lay opinion. What's your response?
Once again, I don't believe that was an improper lay of opinion.
Okay.
She is the defendant, which means that she is allowed to answer, I believe.
Not that question. So I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So, what exactly are your feelings about Mr. Brockman?
Well, sometimes he kind of got on my nerves, and sometimes I disliked him, but he was really cool most of the time.
And just one more question for the official record. Did you kill Mackenzie Brackman, your former mock trial coach?
No, I did not, nor would I have ever killed Mr. Brackman.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Becker. My name is Caitlin, and I will be conducting your cross. Ms. Becker, were you at school on March 6, 2020?
I was not.
And what were you doing then?
I was looking for my phone with Taylor Perkins, as I said.
And did you tell anybody else where you were?
No, it was just with me and Taylor.
So you told nobody in a position of authority where you were?
I didn't think it was necessary.
Is there anyone else here today who can testify on behalf of you and your whereabouts?
Taylor Perkins.
And Taylor Perkins is your best friend, correct?
Yes.
So the only person who can testify for you today is your best friend?
Yeah.
And what do you think happened to your phone?
I believe it was stolen.
And who do you think took it?
Alex Fuentes, but then he gave it to Blair Rollins.
And why do you think Alex Fuentes took your phone?
Because he was jealous of my spot on the team, and he was really good friends with Blair Rollins.
And what grade were you in last year at the time of Brackman's death?
I was a senior.
And what grade was Alex Fuentes in?
I believe he was a junior.
So wouldn't that mean that Alex would have a whole nother year without you to win an award?
Well, sure, but he's still an upperclassman, and it's very important.
And do you have any concrete proof that Alex Fuentes took your phone?
He was the last one that had it.
But you have no concrete proof, correct, Ms. Becker?
I don't have any concrete.
Thank you. I'd like to now discuss your relationship with your coach. You and Mr. Brockman didn't get along, correct?
Not particularly.
Did Brockman say you were lazy?
Sometimes.
And he always said that you didn't put in the work for mock trial, correct?
Just not in his eyes. I put in just as much work as everyone else.
Yet Brockman said that you did not put in the work for mock trial, correct?
In his opinion.
And you argued with Brockman at almost every practice, correct?
Every practice, give or take, yeah.
And did you think that Mr. Brockman had a big ego?
Most of the time.
And did you think that Mr. Brockman hated you?
I don't think he hated me, but I still respected him.
Ms. Becker, you state that you don't think Mr. Brockman hated you?
Not all the time, but I still respected him as a person.
Ms. Becker, did you make a statement before coming into court today?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall that you had the time to change your statement before your appearance in court?
Yes.
And the statement was made under oath, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, permission to screen share?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. One moment, please. Ms. Becker, can you read line 29 for me, please?
To myself or to the court?
Out loud to the court, please.
Is this a stipulated exhibit, counsel? Is that what this is?
This is the witness statement of Avery Becker.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
When he got to court, he really wasn't very good. I think that's why he hated me.
Thank you. I'll ask you again, I'm sorry. Your Honor, permission to stop screen sharing?
Yes.
Ms. Becker, is your memory refreshed?
Yes, it is.
May I ask you again, do you think that Mr. Brockman hated you?
We can go with that, yes.
And do you think that Mr. Brockman was a respectable attorney?
Not all the time.
And did you think that Mr. Brockman was a good mock trial coach?
In ways he was, but in more ways he was not.
And you deeply cared about your mock trial success, correct?
Yeah, mock trial was very important to me.
And were your strengths in mock trial crosses and closings?
Can you repeat the question?
Were your strengths in mock trial crosses and closings?
Yes, I was particularly strong at crosses and closings.
And strength in these areas requires quick thinking, correct?
Yes, it does.
And for mock trial closings, one has to be adept at telling stories the way one wants them to be told, correct?
That is one way to consider that.
Hence, you're good at telling stories the way you want them to be told, correct? Given that you're good at mock trial closings.
I definitely would not say that.
But you did state that your strength in mock trial was closings, correct?
In a mock trial, not in a real case.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. And Bracken demoted you to your mock trials B team, correct?
Yes, he did.
And you stated that B team is full of losers, correct?
Yeah.
And were you happy about Brockman demoting you to a team full of losers?
I mean, it's not necessarily something I'd want to be doing, but it's what had to be done.
And how did you do at regionals last year?
I did really well.
And did Mr. Bracken congratulate you?
He did not.
And his lack of support made you angry, correct?
A little bit in the moment.
And in your rage, you intentionally vandalized Brackman's Porsche, correct?
Yes. I thought it was
Hence
a dry erase marker, so I thought it would just come off.
Hence, given that you deliberately vandalized his car, you didn't respect Brackman's possessions, correct?
I offered to clean it and I offered to pay it back since I figured out it was permanent. So
Would you categorize vandalism as respect, Ms. Becker?
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you. And you didn't respect Brackman himself either, correct?
I mean, I always respect my authorities, but he gave me reasons to not at some points.
And do you like Mr. Brackman?
Not all the time.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. And were you extremely mad at Brackman the last time you saw him in person?
In the moment, yes. I was upset.
And when you returned home after vandalizing Brackman's car, did you tell your mother what you had done to your coach's car?
No, I didn't think it was relevant at the time.
So given that you only told part of the story, you have a history of omitting the truth, correct?
In a way.
Thank you. And you only told your mother what happened to you as opposed to what you did, correct?
Sure.
Did you or did you not tell your mother that, and I quote, "I would get back at him if it was the last thing I did," end quote?
It was a very in the moment thing, and like I said earlier, I was upset at the moment, so I did say that.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Your Honor, there are no further questions.
Thank you. The witness may be excused. Does the defense have another witness?
Oh, actually, Your Honor, I was wondering if I could do a quick redirect.
Very quickly.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, is it your understanding that Taylor would lie for you?
I don't believe Taylor would lie to me and lie for me in a case such as this. This is where people's lives are at stake.
And who was the last person that was in possession of your phone that you know of?
Alex Fuentes at the Fry Shack. I gave him my phone to play some games.
Okay, thank you. That is all. No further questions, Your Honor.
Well, since I allowed you to do redirect, prosecution, one question, if you want to take it.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, do you have concrete knowledge of anything that Ms. Perkins could be feeling or thinking at any given point in time?
We're best friends and we tell each other a lot of things, so I do know how she feels and thinks sometimes.
Yet you do not know for a fact for certain what she can be thinking, as you are not her, correct?
I'm not her, but we are.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. There are no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Defense, do you have more witnesses?
Your Honor, I would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Thank you.
Can you please state your full name and spell out your last for the jury?
Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to Colorado High School, or CHS, and I was a senior last year.
How did you know Avery Becker?
I was best friends with Avery, and we were both on the mock trial team.
How did you know Mackenzie Brockman?
Brockman was our coach for mock trial.
What did you think of Coach Brockman?
I thought he was a mediocre coach and an even more mediocre lawyer. Sometimes coach could make bad choices for the team.
And who do you think was the best lawyer on your mock trial team?
I thought Avery was the best lawyer, but Brockman disagreed because he didn't like how she put in little effort but still came out on top.
From your observations, what was the relationship between Avery and Brockman?
From what I saw, Brockman disliked Avery because she was often unprepared for practices, but was still better than everyone else, and that drove Brockman mad. And Avery sometimes played pranks on Brockman, but was definitely not irrational enough to commit murder.
What happened a month before the regional tournament last year?
Last year before the tournament, Avery came extremely unprepared, and Brockman got so mad that he demoted Avery to B team.
How did you react to Avery being demoted to B team?
I was shocked because Avery is the best attorney and it was her senior year, so she deserved to be on A team. So I stepped down as a show of support for Avery so she could be on A team because I thought she deserved it. And I don't really like mock trial that much without Avery.
Let's move to a little later. What happened at the regionals tournament last year?
At regionals, Avery won best attorney and best closing argument.
What happened after this?
At our next practice, Brockman yelled at Avery and basically told her that she didn't deserve the awards. Obviously, Avery got mad. I mean, who wouldn't get mad? And then retaliated by vandalizing Brockman's car. It was just a stupid prank, but then Brockman went as far as kicking Avery off the team.
What did you do about Avery getting kicked off the team?
Well, Avery texted everyone on the team to try to get back on, even Alex Fuentes, and those who did not get along. Alex always wanted the roles that Avery got, so he had zero interest in helping her get back on.
What happened on March 5th?
On March 5th, Avery swung by the school to talk to Coach, but Coach wouldn't hear it, so she came to my house to hang with me. Later in the evening, we went to the Fry Shack to get some food.
What happened at the Fry Shack?
At the Fry Shack, we saw all of the mock trial people eating, and everyone was telling Avery how it was so unfair that she got kicked off the team. But Alex was saying it in a totally insincere way. And then Avery got mad, so she stormed off to the bathroom and even forgot her phone. After that, Avery came back and we left, and I'm not sure if she got her phone back.
What did you do after you left the Fry Shack?
We just left and hung out at the mall.
What happened on the morning of March 6th?
On the morning of March 6th, Avery picked me up to go to school since we normally ride together. But when I was texting her if she was picking me up and she didn't answer her phone, I asked her about it. And we realized that her phone was missing. So we decided to ditch school since we didn't have anything going on that day and retrace our steps.
How long did you look for Avery's phone?
We spent the entire day retracing our steps. We checked the Fry Shack and the mall, and we also used my phone to text and call Avery.
Objection, Your Honor. Narration.
Counsel? Response?
Your Honor, she's just answering the question of how long she was looking for Avery's phone.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Please, quickly.
She is answering the question. She answered the question already, but now she is expanding on her answer, answering where she went, not how long she went.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead, counsel.
I'll re-ask the question. How long did you look for Avery's phone?
We spent the entire day looking. We checked the Fry Shack and the mall, and we used my phone to text and call Avery's.
Why couldn't you use a tracking device from your phone?
I have an Android and Avery had an iPhone, so we couldn't use Find My iPhone. And I know that you can find it online using iCloud, but we were really panicked, so we didn't even think of that.
What did you do after you couldn't find the phone?
After looking everywhere, we went back to the Fry Shack to check with the afternoon staff, and we saw the mock trial people there, and we were surprised.
Why were you surprised when you saw the mock trial team members there?
We were surprised because they should have been at practice, but apparently Brockman never showed up. Later, we found out it was because he had been, killed.
How did you and Avery react to Brockman's death?
We were really shocked since we had nothing to do with it, and we talked to each other about it.
Objecting, Your Honor. Speculation.
Counsel?
Your Honor, under Rule 702, this opinion is rationally based on the witness's perception.
I'll sustain that objection.
Okay. What did you and Avery talk about?
After talking, we kind of thought that maybe Blair Rowlands could have been involved.
Why is that?
Well, it always seemed to me that Blair hated Brockman after he lost the case that sent Blair's dad to prison. Blair was always a weird kid, and he had a big reason to hate Brockman. He was also best friends with Alex Fuentes.
What does Alex have to do with this?
Well, I think that Alex took Avery's phone when she left at the Fry Shack and gave it to Blair, and they created fake text messages that were entered into the case. I know this is like a huge stretch, but I mean, once you eliminate the
Is there anything else you would like the jury to know? I'm sorry, I think you lost your microphone.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Is there anything else you would like the jury to know?
I would like the jury to know that Blair was also not at school the day of Brockman's death. Although Avery and I weren't either, we were together the entire day. Our stories match, and we were nowhere near Brockman's house. You can even track my phone for proof of where we were.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Perkins. My name is Josie Coster, and I will be conducting your cross. Let's begin by discussing your relationship with Ms. Becker. Would you say that you are Ms. Becker's best friend?
I would say that, yes.
Now let's move on to your relationship and Ms. Becker's relationship with the victim. Did you like Mr. Brockman?
At times, he could be a little, iffy at times.
And did you think that he was a good coach?
I thought he was an okay coach.
You said in your testimony that Mr. Brockman did not like Ms. Becker, correct?
I did say that, yes.
Did you notice a feud between Mr. Brockman and Ms. Becker?
Yeah, it was just like a little thing they had going on between them.
As Ms. Becker's best friend, did you ever observe this feud bothering Ms. Becker?
I did, yes.
And you testified that Ms. Becker vandalized Mr. Brockman's car, correct?
Yes.
And did Mr. Brockman take her off the team after this occurrence?
He did, yes.
Do you think that it was fair that Mr. Brockman took Ms. Becker off the mock trial team?
No, I thought it was unfair, especially since Avery offered to pay it all back.
Would you describe Ms. Becker as rash? I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I think your microphone.
Sorry, I think my sound cut out. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Would you describe Ms. Becker as rash?
She could be rash at times, yes.
And do you think that Ms. Becker has an inflated ego?
At times.
Now let's move on to the claims about Alex Fuentes and Blair Rollins. Do you like Alex Fuentes?
I don't have much of an opinion on her, but I don't like her that much.
And do you like Blair Rollins?
Not really. He always came off as weird to me.
You stated in your testimony that without talking to Ms. Becker, you never would have guessed that Mr. Rollins killed Mr. Brackman, correct?
Correct.
Would you describe the accusation that Mr. Fuentes made fake text messages from Ms. Becker as random?
No, I think it's possible.
In your testimony, you described the accusation that Mr. Fuentes made a fake text message from Ms. Becker as random. Did you not?
If it's in my statement, I must have said it.
Okay. Is this story that you believe is true that Mr. Fuentes picked up Ms. Becker's phone and gave it to Mr. Rollins?
Yes, I think that did happen.
And would you describe the story as a stretch?
It could be, yes, it could be a stretch.
And yet you also testified that despite being unlikely, the story is not impossible, so it must be true, correct?
It's not impossible, but it's also a stretch.
But you stated that your reasoning is it must be true if it's not impossible in your testimony, correct?
Well, like I said before, although it might not be possible, there's also a possibility that it did happen.
And you developed this reasoning from which show on Netflix?
Midsummer Murders.
Now let's move on to what happened on the 5th and 6th of March 2020. Do you remember seeing Ms. Becker leave her phone on the table when you were leaving the Fry Shack the night of March 5th?
I don't explicitly remember it.
And were you with Ms. Becker on March 6th, the day of the murder?
I was the entire day.
Were you two at school that day?
No, we were at the mall.
Did you notify anyone as to where you would be on that day?
No, we didn't.
So to be clear, no one in this courthouse today, outside of you and Ms. Becker, can confirm that you two were looking for the phone, correct?
Yes.
Did you and Ms. Becker hang out at the mall after your time at the Fry Shack?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. Did you and Ms. Becker hang out at the mall after your time at the Fry Shack?
Yes, we did.
And the next morning, did you know that Ms. Becker did not respond to your text about her driving you?
Yes.
And did you ask her about this lack of response in the car?
I did.
You previously testified, quote, "When I said something about it, we realized Avery's phone was missing," end quote, correct?
Yes.
And yet you stated that Miss Becker's phone was like her third kidney, correct?
I did, yes.
You also stated that her phone was never out of reach, correct?
Yes.
But it is still in your testimony that, to the best of your knowledge, Miss Becker went all night and an entire morning without realizing that her phone was missing, correct?
Well, because of previous events, Avery was kind of upset, so she didn't really notice.
But it is still in your testimony that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Okay. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
May I perform a brief redirect, Your Honor?
Very briefly, yes. Go ahead.
Ms. Perkins, would you lie for a best friend like Avery?
No, absolutely not.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
I'll let her answer the question. Go ahead.
I definitely wouldn't lie, even though Avery and I are close friends and there's so much I would do for her. There's no way I would lie about something this big, especially when lives are involved.
And one last question. Why didn't you notify anyone that you were skipping school on March 6th?
We didn't think it was necessary. There was nothing going on that day.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. In fairness, counsel, I'll let you ask a brief question on recross.
I don't have any, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Does the defense have another witness?
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Blake Van Owen to the stand. Can you please state your full name and spell out the last name?
Blake Van Owen, VAN space OWEN.
Professor Owen, please tell me about your occupation.
I'm a private investigator and professor at CU Denver.
And what qualifications do you have?
I have a master's degree in criminal justice, and I have regularly been an expert in police practices, use of force, false arrest, and forensic evidence techniques.
Is there anything else you're a witness in?
Yeah, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
Where are you accepted as a defense expert?
In the U.S. District Courts of Colorado, Kansas, and Arizona, and in the state courts of Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, I would like to enter Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and present-day general police investigation tactics.
Counsel, I don't know that you've laid a foundation for or for crime scene reconstruction. I'd lay a little better foundation, if you would.
Yeah. So what, oh God, I'm a mess, sorry. What experience do you have in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics?
I regularly testify as an expert, and I've used it in many cases.
Okay, Your Honor, I would like to enter Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and present-day general police investigation tactics because she has experience in those subjects.
Any voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Ms. Van Owen, were you at the scene of the crime?
No.
So then can you, for a fact, say how you did your CSR investigation if you were not at the scene of the crime?
I didn't have to be at the scene of the crime to have an accurate crime scene reconstruction.
So to you, it is not pertinent that you be at the scene of the crime when you are getting specific information from what happened at that crime.
I mean, I have seen all the exhibits and there's evidence that I used.
But you do not have the experience of being at the scene of the crime, correct?
No, I did not travel.
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
Counsel?
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yeah, please.
Your Honor, as stated before in Kyle Kuzak's direct, in CSR investigation, it is very pertinent to the case that the CSR investigator be at the scene of the crime to make logical conclusions on this case. Ms. Van Owen was not at the scene of the crime.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead and ask your question. Ask it again, counsel.
So then you cannot say with certain. So then you were not at the scene of the crime, correct?
Yes, I was not at the scene of the crime.
And you do not have the experience in this case for being at the scene of the crime, correct?
I wasn't at the scene of the crime.
Thank you. How long were you with your police department?
About 9 months.
And are you still a police officer?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevant.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Please.
The person directing Ms. Van Owen stated that she would like to enter Ms. Van Owen as an expert in police practices, and as she was with the police department before, it is pertinent to this case.
I agree. Go ahead.
Are you still a police officer, Ms. Van Owen?
No, I'm not currently a police officer.
Did you quit?
Yes, I did.
And what happened?
I had injured a young woman during an arrest, and I felt very guilty about it.
And would an expert in police practices make that mistake?
Well, I wasn't an expert in police practices at the time. I was a police officer.
And wouldn't a police officer be an expert in their job?
Well, yeah, but
Thank you. And yet.
Objection, Your Honor. I am entering the witnesses as in police investigation tactics, not like general police tactics.
Well, isn't that part of police technique and tactics is general police work? Counsel, I'll agree with you that we're getting a little bit far afield. And at this point, counsel, we're only asking about questions about her qualifications. Her credibility or questions you can ask on direct or on cross, I'm sorry.
Yes, Your Honor.
We're just dealing with her qualifications. So to keep them to her qualifications as an expert, please.
Yes, Your Honor. I object to this witness being entered as an expert, and I believe I've laid sufficient otherwise.
Court will accept her as an expert in counsel as a police investigative techniques. Is that what you want her admitted as?
It was crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and present-day general police investigation tactics.
So she'll be accepted in all three areas.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. What do you think of Cusack's reconstruction of the crime scene?
I think that they had insufficient time and made the easy conclusion about what happened.
What do you think is wrong with the prosecution's case?
I think that Cusack's conclusion was heavily impacted by Markowitz's theory, that Becker was the one who broke in. They looked for evidence that would support that theory and ignored inconsistent evidence.
Anything else?
Cusack's main theory was based on very little evidence. They said that there was an intruder and a struggle, and then the intruder stabbed Bracken with the same knife that Bracken had grabbed from the knife block in his kitchen to defend himself.
And what do you think of the scuff marks on the floor?
Cusack used them as evidence of a struggle, but there is no way to know how old those scuff marks are or what they're from.
And the murder weapon?
The murder weapon is in a different brand, style, and has different blade dimensions than those in the knife block. It is unlikely that the knife was taken by Brackman from the knife block. It is much more likely that the murderer brought the knife to the crime scene.
And how do you think that the knife was held?
I've reviewed hundreds of autopsies from stabbings, where most people tend to hold a knife with the blade pointing down. Cusack failed to mention this. In addition, some knife handles, including the murder weapon, are made to be held one specific way.
And you recreated the way that the knife was held, is that correct?
Yes.
If you were shown a picture of your recreation, would you recognize it?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 21.
Did you say 21, counsel?
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I am showing you what has previously been marked as Exhibit 21 for identification. Are you familiar with the image?
Yes.
How are you familiar with the image?
It shows my recreation of how I believe the knife was held.
And given your familiarity with the, how are you familiar with the image?
I created it and then took the picture.
And given your familiarity with what is shown in the photograph, does it accurately depict the way that the knife was held?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy.
Let me ask this question. Is that the same knife that we've seen in previous photographs?
Yeah, or
no, Your Honor.
Not the exact same knife, no.
Counsel, lay a better foundation on the similarities between this knife and the knife that we've seen before, the one found at the crime scene.
What is the similarities between this knife and the murder weapon?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Compound question.
I'm asking the similarities between the two. It's one question, not describe both knives.
May I respond?
No, overruled. Go ahead.
So the similarities between the two knives are the position of how the knife was held during the stabbing and the handle and how it is made to be held.
All right. So does this accurately depict the way the knife was held?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy.
Well, if they can lay the foundation, it's most definitely relevant.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may, yes.
This talk about how the knife is held may be pertinent to the case, but it cannot be because we do not know this Miss Vanone does not know exactly how the victim held the knife because she was not there.
No one was there except the victim, the murderer, and my witness is an expert.
Lay the foundation how she can form the conclusion that the knife was held that way.
So Professor Van Owen, you stated that some knives are meant to be held a specific way.
Yes.
And so what are the similarities between this knife and the murder weapon?
Okay, so it's the blade angle and how it must have nicked his artery. It must have been held that way. And the way that you were holding it based on the knife handle, it must have been held that way.
Right. And so does this image accurately depict the way that your recreation shows how you believe the knife was held?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence Exhibit 21.
Counsel?
No objection, Your Honor.
Permission to stop screen sharing, Your Honor.
21 will be admitted. Yes, go ahead.
All right. Let's move on to another aspect. What do you think of the Ring doorbell?
I think that the theory that the victim was alerted by the doorbell is unlikely because Brackman could have turned notifications off or simply not seen a notification.
And the cell tower data?
There is no doubt that Avery's phone was near the victim's house, but that does not mean that Avery was near the house. In addition, cell tower information is not very precise. In fact, there's a major roadway leading right past Becker's house where anyone could have driven past, including Blair Rollins.
And what does Blair Rollins have to do with this case?
Blair Rollins' father, Jonathan Rollins, was charged with murder and was defended by the victim, Mackenzie Brackman. Jonathan Rollins was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. As Jonathan was being escorted back to prison, he yelled out, threatening Brackman.
If you were shown a recreation of the recording of what Jonathan said, would you recognize it?
If I was shown the recording, I would recognize it, yes.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to show the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 22.
Last thing I do.
We only got half of it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll get get you back, Bracken. It's the last thing I do.
So I just showed you what has previously been marked as Exhibit 22 for identification. Are you familiar with the recording?
Yes, I requested it from the court and reviewed it prior to preparing my report.
Given your familiarity with the recording, would you say it accurately depicts the event?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence what has previously been marked as Exhibit 22.
And that's just an audio recording?
Yes.
Yes.
Counsel? Any objection?
Yes, objection. Your Honor, I have an objection about this, as it is hearsay because it is an out-of-court document and Ms. Venone was not there when this was said.
Your Honor, I would like to respond. It is a public recording in the court of law.
That doesn't mean it's not hearsay.
It's a public
Is that recording under oath?
No. No, Your Honor.
In that objection with the foundation that's been laid. Go ahead and try a better foundation as to why it should come.
How are you familiar with the recording, Professor Van Owen?
I requested it from the court public record and I reviewed it prior to preparing my report.
And would you say, how is it relevant to the case?
Because this is Blair Rawlings, a student who went to school with Avery and Becker's father. And I find it relevant because it gives Blair Rawlings a motive.
All right. Would you?
So let me ask the witness a question, okay? Is this recording relevant to your expert opinion? Did you use this in order to formulate your opinion?
I did.
All right. Then based on that answer to that question, I will go ahead and overrule the objection and let you talk about that recording.
Okay. So what does that recording have to do with this?
Well, I believe it shows that Blair Rawlings would want to avenge their father, and their father is clearly upset, and Blair Rawlings would be too. And I believe that makes them a primary suspect.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to add about Blair Rawlings?
Objection, Your Honor. Ambiguity.
Rephrase, counsel.
What else do we?
Ask your question again, please.
What are the similarities between Avery Becker and Blair Rawlings?
Avery Becker and Blair Rawlings have the same height and build.
What do you, and where is Blair Rawlings now?
Blair Rawlings mysteriously disappeared after graduation and has not been seen since.
What do you believe happened to the defendant's phone?
I believe that it was stolen by either Fuentes, who gave it to Rawlings, or Rawlings found it at the Fry Shack and brought it to Brackman's house to incriminate Becker.
And what do you think of the phone records?
I believe they're a little bit not very accurate, and they don't directly point to Becker.
In your expert opinion, what could Markowitz have done better?
I think that Markowitz should have seen all the phones that were in the vicinity of the crime scene, seen everyone who had communicated with the defendant, and checked Taylor Perkins' phone, since they're testifying for Avery's whereabouts.
What else do you think the police did wrong?
Their photos of the cast-off on the wall were mysteriously corrupted when any good police officer would have more than one copy of an image from a crime scene.
And who was missing from school the day of the murder?
Becker, Perkins, and Rollins were missing. We already know that Becker and Perkins were at the mall, so where was Rollins?
And what do you think of the screenshots of texts from Alex Fuentes?
I think that it's ridiculous. The police had the tools necessary for a more extensive search, but they chose not to use them. There is even a specific tool called Celebrite that is used to download the contents of phones, including text messages.
And what do you think about the contents of the text between Alex Fuentes and Avery Becker?
They could have easily been faked. It is very easy to change contact names and create conversations.
What physical evidence do we have that the defendant was at the scene of the crime?
Objection, Your Honor. Ambiguity.
Overruled. Go ahead,
The prosecution has no evidence that the defendant specifically was at the scene of the crime.
But what evidence have they provided?
They have cell tower data that is not very specific that shows a phone near Avery Becker's residence and Blair Rollins' residence traveling towards the crime scene.
And what about Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins had the ultimate motive, revenge for his father. I believe Blair obtained Becker's phone, traveled with it to the crime scene to incriminate Becker, and killed Brackman.
What can you summarize about Avery Becker's whereabouts on March 6th?
Avery Becker was with Taylor Perkins the entire day looking for Avery's phone that was stolen.
In your expert opinion, who murdered Mackenzie Brackman?
Blair Rollins, with the help of Alex Fuentes, is a much more likely possibility than the defendant, Avery Becker. There is no evidence that the defendant was at the scene of the crime.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Vinone. My name is Zach Hines, and I'll be conducting your cross today. Do you believe yourself above your police department?
Above my police department?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that means.
In your statement, your witness statement, you said that you keep them in check, implying that you are above your police department, correct?
I believe that I point out their mistakes, yes.
And is it true that you got into legal trouble?
I was officially cleared of wrongdoing by the police.
Is it true that you got into legal trouble?
I was sued by the woman I injured.
Thank you. Why did you get into legal trouble?
Because I injured a woman during an arrest.
So then it was your actions that got your department into legal trouble.
It wasn't my department, it was just me.
You got your police department into legal trouble with your actions, though, however, correct?
I was cleared of wrongdoing by the police.
So, as you said before, you believe yourself above the police department. How do these actions make you any better than the police?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question.
Rephrase, counsel.
How do your actions make you any better than the police department you were with?
Well, that was about 14 years ago, a little more actually, and 16. And now I realized that that was horrible and I felt very bad about it. And okay.
Do you believe the victim had his ringtone off for his ring cameras?
I think that it's possible.
The perpetrator entered the sliding door, right?
Yes.
And do doors make noises when they are opened?
Some of them.
So then, would it be fair to assume that the victim could have been alerted by the door?
It is possible that he was alerted by the door.
Which means that even if the victim didn't have his ringtone on, he could still have been alerted by something else besides the intruder entering, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean.
He still could have been alerted by something else besides the ringtone footage, correct?
Yes, he could have been alerted by something else.
And is the defendant a trained killer?
No, the defendant is not a trained killer.
Then how would he know to stab a man in the back aorta area that would make him die of internal bleeding?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
If the victim was not a trained killer, then how would he know to stab Ms. Mackenzie Brackman in the back aorta area where he did, that would make him die of internal bleeding?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of direct.
And counsel, I do believe it's speculation. I don't believe she's claimed to be an expert in forensic pathology.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Please.
She is a expert in crime scene reconstruction, which would imply that she has had some experience with people who might have been trained in these acts, and she knows what the type of skill it would take for someone to kill someone with using this stabbing technique.
Well, why don't you ask her if she feels comfortable giving an opinion about that subject matter?
Do you feel comfortable giving an opinion on this subject, Ms. Van Owen?
Can you repeat the question?
If the defendant is not a trained killer, how would he know to stab a man in the area that he did that would make him die of internal bleeding?
I don't feel comfortable answering that question.
Are you a medical expert?
Why would that matter?
Are you a medical expert?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Well, let's see what her answer to the question is.
No, I'm not a medical expert.
Thank you. Was the victim killed with a knife?
Yes.
And you claim that the knife was of a different style and brand of the other victim's knives, correct?
In the knife block, yes.
Can knives be lost or broken?
Yeah.
And isn't it possible that the victim had a knife of a different set?
It's possible, but I don't find it very likely.
Do you have any concrete evidence other than the style and make that supports the perpetrator bringing the knife into the victim's house from an outside source?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Your Honor, may I respond?
No, answer the question, please. Overruled.
Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Do you have any concrete evidence other than the style and make that supports the perpetrator bringing the knife into the victim's house from an outside source?
No, I don't have any concrete evidence, but...
From the ring cameras, the perpetrator was not holding a knife, correct?
No, but it could have been
Thank you.
somewhere else.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Is everybody okay? Does anybody need a break? We're actually, well, we're right about on time, actually. So, is everybody ready to go into closing? Okay, I'm assuming that means yes. So, does the prosecution have a closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
How much would you like to reserve for rebuttal?
The remainder of the time that I have left.
The entire argument's rebuttal?
After, no time, Your Honor.
You can split up your argument. You get the same amount of time as defense, but you can split yours up into your opening closing and your rebuttal closing because you have the burden. So you want the whole thing as rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. All right. And that means, does the defense have a closing argument?
Yes, we do, Your Honor. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. This is a quote from Macbeth. This is what the prosecution wishes you to believe. Walking shadows and masked figures, they claim Avery Becker strutted around, and they wish for this innocent to be heard from no more. This is a tale told by, well, maybe not an idiot, but someone very tragically misinformed. It is full of sound and fury, fights and drama. This isn't real life. Macbeth was influenced by a prophecy, making him a murderer. Avery Becker is simply a teenager. No magic, no bravado, no logical reason to commit murder. People of the jury, today the prosecution has attempted to fool you with the story of Avery Becker, yes, that Avery Becker sitting right there, murdering her mock trial coach. Now, I'm honestly not sure why they are so convinced. There is no solid evidence to convict Avery. It's a case of mistaken identity. It's, in fact, so much so that they never identified Avery Becker at all. They don't know who Avery Becker is in this courtroom. And it is your obligation as the jury that to convict my client, you must be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker was at the scene of the crime, to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker broke into Mr. Brackman's house, to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker killed her own mock trial coach. So let's start with what we learned today. We have learned that many pieces of Ms. Cusack's theory were based on little to no evidence. She saw scuff marks, there was a fight. She saw an empty knife slot, so was the murder weapon. The dimensions were completely wrong. There are also many things she didn't see or failed to mention, such as how the knife was held. It's rather insignificant until you consider that is how Mr. Brackman was killed. They don't know how Mr. Brackman was killed. And here's the real kicker. There's no fingerprints. There's no DNA. The most they have is their masked intruder. Could have been anyone. From Miss Blake Van Owen, we've learned the correct version of the crime scene reconstruction, where the murderer preemptively brought the knife, and the scuff marks were simply that, scuff marks. We have learned from Avery that she was nowhere near the crime, and Taylor has supported this. We even heard Miss Becker, under oath, proclaim she was innocent. The prosecution has also revealed some things, such as how we've learned that Avery's phone was somewhat near the scene of the crime. Although this is a little strange, as we've learned that Avery's phone was most likely stolen, and probably by Alex Fuentes, so they could be convicting their own witness. Now, this was probably a rush job by the police. It's the type of rush job where someone such as Avery can get convicted of crime she so clearly didn't commit, one that has selective evidence, not the full evidence. For instance, Miss Markowitz didn't even bother to use her training in cell phone data recovery to get Alex's text. She also has one singular piece of evidence placing Avery anywhere even close to the scene of the crime. Except, as I mentioned earlier, this could just as easily convict Alex. She neglected to use her training in several other pivotal pieces of the case. This could be seen as blatant willful ignorance or simply not checking before accusing someone of murder. She also never checked where another primary suspect during the crime was, nor whether or not Avery actually sent texts to Alex the day before the crime. As should be apparent by now, Avery Becker is innocent. And if some tiny fragment of the story Kyle Cusack told you, or some testimony by Alex Fuentes, or even something from Jordan Markowitz is still bothering you, remember your obligation as the jury. You must assume innocent until proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, to be guilty. From where I'm standing at least, Avery Becker is almost painfully innocent.
Thank you, counsel. Rebuttal.
Good morning, respected members of the jury. Thank you for your time and patience on this case. Nobody expected the maws of death to close around Mackenzie Brackman so soon. Then again, neither did the characters in Macbeth when King Duncan was slaughtered by a traitor full of zeal. None of us are here today to talk about the fate of Mr. Brackman. That has already been sealed. Today, we are here to see justice done for this late mock trial teacher, to show Avery Becker that there are consequences for her actions. Why should we let her walk free after such a heinous act? Let me paint you a picture. How would you feel if your father had just been butchered? Would you let the top suspect roam free after clearly stating, quote, "I'll get him back if it's the last thing I do," end quote? After so much incriminating evidence, would you let your father's killer be allowed to walk the same streets as you? It is time for Avery Becker to reap what she has sown. The defense had a very convincing testimony. Like Miss Becker, who is good at thinking on her feet, the defense gave answers based on what they wanted, not on the case's reality. Miss Van Owen ranted about her superior CSR and police work. If this is true, why did she leave her department? She spent her time explaining why Kyle Cusack was wrong. even though Blake was not at the scene of the crime. Ms. Van Owen's case consisted of claiming that her conclusion was superior to theirs. Ms. Van Owen is not entered as an expert in every field. She claimed that the prosecution had faulty police work, but yet she herself was never at the scene of the crime. Miss Perkins, Lady Macbeth, who would defend her companion to the very end. She spent her time explaining why Avery Becker is innocent and claiming to be with Miss Becker the day of the murder. Coincidence? Miss Perkins was one of Becker's best friends and showed this by giving her spot on the mock trial team as a senior to Becker after Avery's incompetence to hold her tongue. Did the defense choose to check Taylor's phone records the night of the murder? Miss Becker, Macbeth. Time and again throughout this case, she has claimed how innocent she is. The defense mentions something very important, the impulsiveness of Avery Becker. However, there is a line that one can cross into being more than impulsive. Would someone impulsive argue with their coach? Sure. Would someone impulsive believe they were the best on the team and brag about themselves? Sure. But ladies and gentlemen, would someone impulsive vandalize their coach's car? Absolutely not. Would someone impulsive then kill their coach? Of course not. Avery Becker crossed the line out of being impulsive and entered the domain of being a felon. Need I remind you, she told her mom that she would, quote, get back at Bracken if it was the last thing she did, end quote. While Avery seems like a sweet and innocent girl at her core, she has fangs. Just as you cannot judge a book by its cover, you cannot judge a person on their facades. In Becker's case, this facade was the sweet and innocent kind. Where the defense's facts were fruitless, the prosecution's facts were abundant. Please note, the prosecution has the burden of proof. The prosecution began with Ms. Fuentes. Ms. Fuentes is well known for her respect. Mr. Brockman knew this when he trusted her enough to be one of the mock trial leaders. Why would she need to frame Avery? Why? What advantage would that give her over Avery? Detective Markowitz is an expert in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery and figured out where Becker was on the night of the murder. Kyle Kuzak, McDuff, whose statement, position, and honor far outweigh Miss Van Owen's. Kyle Kuzak was a CSR at the scene of the crime, and he mentioned that true CSR work must be done at the scene of the crime. He was there. Van Owen was not. Mr. Kuzak's conclusion was that the intruder entered with the intent to burglarize. This was supported as the perpetrator was not shown bringing a knife into the house. Kuzak began with an open mind and all the facts. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to the facts. You may be swayed to decide that Avery Becker is not guilty from the defense's side of the trial. They tried to sway you by limiting Avery's actions to impulsiveness. Avery crossed the line and her actions were that of a felon. The defense also decided to mention the term beyond a reasonable doubt. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Avery may have been innocent at one time, but she ceded her innocence when she decided to take actions of a felon in this case. Kyle Kuzak was at the scene of the crime, not Blake Van Owen. Jordan Markowitz's word far outweighs Mr. Perkins, who is too loyal to Becker. Who do you trust more? Someone who is known for their kindness and respect, or someone who has shown her disrespect time and again? Just like Macbeth, Avery Becker put on a facade. Will you let a murderer walk for such blatant crimes? Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. All right. Congratulations, guys. So at this point, the scorekeepers are going to submit their scores. And when I find out that they've submitted their scores, then we will come back and talk a little bit, okay? So everybody just kind of take a bit of a deep breath, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, okay?
Let's have our scorekeepers turn their cameras on once they have submitted their forms, please. All right, Judge, I will confirm that all 4 submissions have been completed and you can go ahead with your feedback.
All right. So, Mr. Olson, would you like to address everyone to start out?
Sure. What do you have for me to say? This is my first year doing this, so.
Well, just tell us, if you were on the jury, just tell us how you feel about how they presented their respective cases.
Yeah, I think everybody did a fantastic job. That was a lot of information to cover, so that's awesome. You guys should be proud. I think the defense did a really good job of trying to, not necessarily disprove anything, but basically or not necessarily trying to say it wasn't her indefinitely, but kind of just steer it towards it could be anybody type of thing, which I think was important. And I think that the prosecution kind of tried to do a good job of in their cross and stuff like that, try and hone it in on that. So I think everybody was trying to do as best they can for their respective theories.
All right, great, thank you. Mr. Is it Helseth? Is that how you say that?
Yeah, you got it. Good job. Yeah, similar. I think, first of all, y'all, great job. I'm very impressed at the number of facts you all were able to keep track of and stuff. I was really impressed, I think, with the preparation. I think witnesses knew what their facts were. I think attorneys did as well. I think both sides during cross-examinations had great times when they were able to catch the other side, like make an attack that really was helpful. I think overall, for me, I think that you all did a great job. My one piece of constructive criticism is, as someone whose high school was a long time ago, I don't know that referencing Macbeth was helpful for me for either side. But that's just me. It's not a huge thing, but just my little thought. But overall, I think you all did a great job.
All right, great. Thank you, sir. And Ms. Moore?
Hi. First of all, I just want to tell all of you did such a great job. I can tell that you've spent a lot of time reviewing all of the documents, understanding what it is that you're here to do today, and overall, you did an excellent job. I really appreciated your level of professionalism throughout all of this, and also each of you came across as very confident, which goes a long ways. There's a couple individuals I wanted to talk about their performances today. From an opening standpoint, I think Caitlin and Alora, I think you both did a great job. I thought that both of your openings had great themes, that I was able to follow the points. They were concise, and it was great. I also wanted to point out that I really liked Thatcher's cross. I thought that you did a great job getting your witness to concede that the screenshots were faked. You were very persistent and you got to that point, which was excellent. I also thought Zachary did an excellent voir dire of his expert witness. And overall, great job.
Thank you. I will echo what everyone else has said. You guys just did outstanding. I probably sound like a broken record. I've been practicing law for 26 years. This is probably my 20th time I've done this, so pretty close. And I say the same thing every time is that I'm so impressed with the amount of work that you guys put into this. It's impressive. I will echo the comment about Macbeth. You always have to remember that there's going to be a lot of people on your jury panel, including this competition, that may or may not be as well read with Shakespeare as you are. So I really love the theme that you used, Macbeth. The use of the theme is really, really good. And you just maintained that theme throughout the entire trial. But you always have to be careful about your reference, because not everybody because you guys have been studying Macbeth in school. I'll guarantee you I haven't read Shakespeare in a long time. I'm just going to be honest. And so it would be kind of lost on me. But sometimes you have to kind of just maybe have a different reference in mind depending on who you have on your panel. But everybody just did really well. This is not easy stuff. It's a struggle, and it should be a struggle because it's not easy stuff. But you guys really, really are able to think on your feet. I was trying to give you guys lots of carrots so that you could go the right way. And you guys took the bait. You guys knew where to go. And so I applaud that. Miss, is it Winklehawk? Did I say that right? She was kind of struggling.
Winklehake.
Okay, I'm sorry. You were kind of struggling getting in that tape. And if nothing else, for future reference, if you've got an expert on the stand and she says that she used a particular piece of hearsay as part of the foundation for her opinion, it's admissible. That's hearsay. That recording is hearsay. And if you don't bring it in for a particular purpose, like the use of by an expert, it's hearsay. And so when they objected, they were actually correct. And Caitlin, some of your objections, they were right on the nail, but we had to try and let some of that evidence come in. But even your opponent I think they learned from it because they knew you were right, and I think they adapted so regardless, great job, guys. Really good job, and good luck this afternoon.
Thank you all so much.
Your Honor, if I may interject.
My pleasure.
I apologize. May I interject real quick? I just wanted to, again, congratulate everybody. Wish all of you the best of luck in this competition. I've been doing trials and participating in various different practice areas for more than 10 years myself. And I will tell you that some of you came off much more prepared than real life attorneys. So congratulations on that. I only wanted to say, just add one little thing, which was both of you guys as a team together focused on, in my opinion, the right things. The defense, you had a theme throughout the whole time of beyond a reasonable doubt. That's exactly what you needed to focus on. The plaintiff, I think you tackled a more difficult thing, which was bias and character for truthfulness. And that's a subject that even practicing attorneys struggle with, understanding what character evidence is when you can get it in. And you focused on that throughout it. You asked questions that emphasized character for truthfulness, whether Perkins was lying, was making stuff up, and I thought that you guys did a great job of that. So both teams, I think, did a great job at focusing on really an effective theme for the stories that you guys were telling. So congratulations, you all. Good luck throughout this. It was a pleasure to watch you guys this morning.
All right, teams, judges, and scoring panelists, you have been dismissed. One of our other courtrooms is a pretty good distance behind some of the other courtrooms, so don't rush off thinking that you have to be anywhere in 10 minutes. You probably have a good amount of time to prepare for your next proceeding. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.